It may come as a surprise to you, but Team Fortress 2 is not a flawless game. Shocking, I know. Perhaps I should do more videos about all the problems that the game is facing. I don't think I've done enough of those. But yes, the game is a marvel when it comes to a lot of design decisions, such as distinct class outlines and the clear use of team colors that make it very obvious which team you're on. Not even many modern titles seem to understand the importance of these aspects. And while yes, heads have definitely ruined it in a lot of aspects, it's still an excellent example of what class-based team shooters should strive to be. Which is why it pains me so much when I see these obvious bad design decisions in the game, which should have been avoided with a bit of common sense. Most of them aren't even hard to fix, all it takes are a few touch-ups here and there. This video is dedicated to all these incredibly questionable, obvious design flaws that just baffle me how they're still in the game in 2017 current year argument. I need to point out that I'm not going to talk about any weapon or class balances either, oh the reserve shooter's too OP, nerf this, or things like powerhouse needs a timer now. No, what I want to talk about are these tiny, irritating flaws which a lot of other games, sometimes even Valve's own titles, fixed or don't even have in the first place. Yet, for some reason, TF2 seems to lag behind as much as a player with a ping of 200. Oh, look at that! TF2's awful netcode, that's a bonus flaw I didn't even think about. Before I start the video though, please do watch it until the end before writing a comment. I know for a fact that a lot of people keep talking about things I already addressed in my videos, but they just never watch them before posting that comment, so just wait until the end, please. But without any further ado, here we go. Let's begin with a very tiny yet incredibly agitating design flaw. I also know it's not entirely exclusive to TF2, but I know for a fact that a lot of other games don't have this issue, meaning it could easily be fixed. I am of course talking about Steam chat messages blocking parts of your HUD, especially your ammo, metal, Uber, rage and all the other important bits that should never ever be obstructed. I know that this probably wasn't such a big issue back in the day when Steam was still in its baby shoes. Back then, game overlays were something new and Valve didn't exactly know how to deal with them. But nowadays, they should definitely know better that especially FPS games usually have their ammo or health bar in the corners of the screen. And because they're so vital for the game, they should never ever be blocked. Even Valve themselves realized this because CSGO is one of those Steam games which puts the chat message in a place where nothing important is going on, like the upper left corner. This is especially a problem when you're playing Medic and you constantly need to check your Uber meter, and also for Spy who needs to know how much cloak he has left. Yeah, the design of the HUD isn't perfect, but it works for the most part. I know that I could just install a custom HUD which would fix this issue, but it really shouldn't be up to the player to fix a problem that the developer caused and could easily fix. Valve should just move the chat messages in a different corner. The problem with that, however, is that the engineer has a very special overlay in the exact same position, so perhaps a complete overhaul for the entire HUD would be a good idea. But really, any fix would be appreciated because I really don't want to have to go offline just to enjoy my games. Imagine you just heard about Team Fortress 2 and decided to give it a go. After 8 hours of downloading, the game is finally ready to play. You boot it up, hop in a game and swiftly realize that you're playing with about 10 frames per second because Team Fortress 2 is about as well optimized as a Ubisoft title. So you go into the options menu in order to fix this broken mess. But like most TF2 players, you're not a hardcore PC gamer, so you're likely not going to understand what these options mean. Model detail, texture detail, that's understandable, have a great day. But anti-aliasing? Filtering mode? Multi-core rendering? What on earth is even going on? Which one do I change to make my game run better but still make it look nice? That's how I felt the first time I played the game. I had no idea what I was getting into myself there, so I just set everything to low even though that wasn't really necessary. It was only after I did a Google search that I found out what these settings even meant. But that is not how things should be. Not only should the game be optimized, but it should also be made very clear to the player what these graphics settings even mean. What do I mean by this? Well, how about some explanations next to the settings which describe what they do? Valve realized how important that was, which is why they added it to CSGO. To kick it up a notch, it'd be amazing to have a sample image next to the options to show exactly what they do. Because, as we all know, an image speaks louder than 1,000 words, or however the saying goes. And why not take it even further and add some presets? Imagine you had a list of available graphics options ranging from low to high, which changed all of the settings depending on what you picked. So if you picked low, every option would be set to lowest, on medium they'd all be set to medium, and so on and so forth. It would also be very nice if there were more graphics options, like changing the fade distance for objects and textures, among other things. I have a pretty good PC and it can handle all these things, so it really takes me out of it to see a bush or a barrel just disappear in the distance. I feel like this would make everything a lot simpler and even improve gameplay for everyone. Those new players with older PCs could react much quicker and better if they had more frames. I know that googling the settings isn't terribly hard, but it's an unnecessary extra step that you shouldn't have to take and it could be very easily solved. Before I get to the worst design in TF2, I want to give a couple honorable mentions. These are problems that are pretty annoying, but not big enough for me to give them their own spot. For example, you drop the intelligence with the L key, which is never explained anywhere until you look at the settings. Why not just use shift, or at least tell people? Also, finding players you last played with, or even current players, is almost impossible. That's more of a problem with Steam, however I'm sure that just like the chat messages, this could be solved very easily in some way or another. Another thing are bots. These are mostly alright, but they do get stuck very often, aren't available on all game modes, and also fail at pathfinding even if it's generated. I also find it hilarious how engineer bots can walk through their own buildings because they get stuck on them otherwise. Also, they build teleporters on top of other teleporters. I think the biggest problem with bots is how they're both absolutely stupid, but also way too powerful when it comes to spy detection or aim. I'm sure that some slight adjustments here would work wonders. Also worth mentioning is the tutorial of the game. I know I made a whole video about why it's bad, but looking back on it, I have to say I was wrong. The biggest problem it has is that it's only for 4.9 classes and that it doesn't really explain things like rocket jumping. Aside from that, however, it's pretty much alright. I really think Valve should finish it because a lot of people seem to actually use it. Still, I would give the player a reward like a hat or a weapon upon completion. The server browser looks really wonky too. I think it could deserve an overhaul that makes it look more like the simplified version of it. It would also be really good if community servers could get more love from Valve, like a specific browser just for the best servers that meet certain criteria, like no add-ons or no donator perks or anything. What Valve should also overhaul is the system for naming and describing things, such as by showing the entire name or description once and by telling the player how many characters they have left. Just a tiny issue though. And let's not forget replays. The replay editor is pretty much useless at the moment because you can't even record them on most servers anymore, certainly not on Valve ones. And even then it's pretty broken at times. The part I like the most is how if you want to rewind a recording by just 10 seconds, it reloads the entire thing. It is a very well designed program otherwise, but the fact that it's abandoned by Valve makes it a very wasted opportunity. The same goes for demos, and I'm not talking about Demo Man here. Demos are similar to replays, but they're a bit more complex from what I know. The problem is that you need an external guy to even figure out how to record, play and edit them. And even if you figured it out, the editor is iffy at best. Someone on Reddit even wrote their own script to make it easier to use, and I'm just wondering, why is that not in the game? Why not make it easier for people to share their awesome moments and skills? That way other people can learn from them and it would even advertise the game. Casual and competitive have some pretty big problems though. I won't go into depth on why they're bad, everyone else has talked about that already, including myself. I didn't talk about them because A, it's too obvious, and B, I still have the slight hope that Valve might fix them with the Pyro update. What Valve isn't going to fix anytime soon though is their stupid work on whatever you like policy. That one is just poison for TF2 because just not enough developers are interested in the game. I'm sure the TF2 team tries their hardest and loves the game, but Valve needs to support the game too. This topic deserves its own video however. What also deserves its own videos are hats, which slow down the game considerably. As well as unusuals, which are still pretty bad. And even though it might be alright if they don't make sense, people disregard that they're still lazy, don't really fit and ruin the art style. But those were just honorable mentions. Now it's time for the worst design flaw of them all. Team Fortress 2 is a game with an incredibly high skill ceiling and an incredibly high skill floor as well. Playing the classes is not the hardest part, but staying alive is. As a new player, you're going to die and die and die and die and die countless times. Until one day when you finally figure out how to dodge projectiles, surf explosions, jump out of the way of sniper bullets and predict enemy attacks. One of the most important things you're going to have to learn is adapting to enemy attacks and ranking them based on their effectiveness. Sniper headshots are likely to kill you no matter the distance, but minigun fire and shotgun blasts are really only deadly up close. Soon enough you go through these questions in your head automatically. How far do I need to be away? Is jumping right now a good idea? What at the beginning was just trial and error, then turns into a dance with death. You even start to calculate how much damage you can take before dying. Imagine you're a pyro with only 120 HP. There's a soldier to your left and an engineer with a shotgun to your right. Which way should you go? Rocket does about 100 damage and so does a shotgun, but only at point blank range. As long as you don't get close to the NG, you should be fine, but you could also surf the rocket and survive with only a bit of HP. But then what about fall damage? Would it be better to retreat and get a medkit, or risk going forward to reach your own team's medic? But don't forget, you only have a few seconds to decide. Alright, let's risk it, you say and decide to tank the damage done by the engineer's shotgun. Due to bullet spread and damage drop-off, you should be able to survive this and only take about 50 damage if you keep a safe distance. So you start running, he readies his weapon, takes his shot, it hits you, and you immediately die because the shotgun randomly decided to do 3 times the damage it was supposed to do. That's right, I'm of course talking about random crits. The biggest problem with random crits is how they take the skill and control away from the player. It doesn't matter if you calculate how much damage you can take or even how far you're away, because in 99% of all cases you're gonna die immediately to random crits. And because they're random, as the name suggests, you can't even predict this. So to avoid it, you would need to treat every attack as lethal. But you would never get anything done that way, so you just have to accept that sometimes you just die and you couldn't really have done anything about it. Sometimes it's not even your fault. Imagine you just respawned, you're walking out of spawn, and then suddenly you get hit by a random crit rocket that you had no way of seeing coming, and you have to wait to respawn again. What, are you not even supposed to leave the spawn? Random crits even destroy class balance. For example, keeping a distance to a heavy doesn't really matter if he just does 3 times the damage because of random chance. And take medic and engineer. Both of them actually get a much higher crit chance because of their patience/sentries dealing damage. That means that even if you kill a medic's patient or an NG sentry and they're all alone and are supposed to be weak, they could still theoretically kill you instantly, especially if they use their melee weapons, which already have a much higher crit chance. Taking skill away from the player is just awful and feels very cheap. Randomness can have a place in games, such as in the form of bullet spread. That is there to make guns less reliable on longer distances, which is a good thing. Games like CSGO are even built around that entire premise, but you can still heavily influence it by standing still or just walking. But random crits, they can't be prevented except by playing too safe, and they can't be predicted either. And because TF2 has such a high skill ceiling, it just adds insult to injury. It doesn't matter what you learn in all of your hours playing the game, because it could all just be for nothing in an instant because of pure chance. I've heard people say that it's good for new players because it gives them a much higher chance of getting a kill. But there's 2 very big problems with that mindset. First of all, players shouldn't rely on luck to get kills. Instead, they should fail and fail and fail until they improve, like in every other game. Secondly, random crits aren't even entirely random. They're actually dependent on how much damage you've dealt, as I've pointed out earlier with the engineer and medic. But that also means that good players are going to do even better. They do more damage, get a higher crit chance, and in return do even more damage, creating a vicious cycle. So basically, new players actually have to suffer more because of it. I am pretty sure random crits also have their upsides, and yes, it is pretty fun to get a random crit rocket that kills 3 enemies at once. But there is a reason why competitive mode disables them. And that is because they're just not fair nor fun to play against. The game should reward skill, not luck. I do know that random crits are sort of skill based due to them being more common the more damage you do. But they are still random and you can't even accurately rely on them, so you just have to hope for the best. And yeah, perhaps they prevent stalemates and make games more interesting, but you know what also does that? Well-designed maps and weapons? So all in all, I think I have to say that random crits are the worst design choice in Team Fortress 2. And that is pretty much it. I am aware that this video was a pretty freaking weird one. I thought I could say more about other design flaws, but TF2 is a very well designed game for the most part. I do know that the first 2 flaws are incredibly minor, but I think they can cause some very big problems. I also think that they could be fixed very easily, and it would be really nice if they were. They're just quality of life improvements, I think it's called. As for random crits, however, please turn them off, Valve. I genuinely don't know if they do that for the Pyro update, but I really hope they do. Please, Valve, it's more fun for everyone involved. Aside from that, however, this is pretty much complaining on a high level. These problems are very annoying and they should be fixed, as that would greatly improve the game. At the same time though, they aren't really game breaking or ruining the player's experience. With the exception of maybe the graphics options, but then again you could Google it. I think the fact that they haven't been fixed for so long shows that. At the same time, however, Valve is a multi-million-dollar company, so they really have no excuse for not polishing their games more. But that is it for this video. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you know other design issues that you think are pretty bad? Also, please leave criticism down below, as I can use that for future videos. But that is it for me. Have a wonderful day and goodbye.